Yap is an experienced AI expert, and after more than 15 years in the field, we explore a number of hypothetical situations that might be just around the corner. So, if you're up for some AI thought experiments, join me in this fun, engaging, and important conversation.
Well, today I was writing a message. I was drafting a message to post on a Facebook group with ChatGPT, and I sent it a one version, and I said, okay, I've made these changes. What do you think of this version? Then I gave it another version, and then afterwards it came to the point, and it said the funniest thing to me. It said, Sam, this version is fine. Please go ahead and post this on a Facebook Messenger. And I was like, okay, I'll just do it then. We've done enough versions. But it was a very interesting point where it sort of like went beyond.
Yeah, I think that's, I wish they would do that more, because I feel like a real person, to make it aligned and to make it good, it also has to help you out, give you a little bit of pushback every once in a while. And I feel like most of the LLMs that they're too complacent, too correct, it's either they give you exactly what you want, or to say, no, I'm as an AI language model, I'm not allowed to do this. And this sort of thing like, okay, you're trying to ask me this question, but why are you asking me this question? You know, what's happening in your life? That's a little bit missing for me. So that it said that, makes me very happy that it said, okay, Sam, you're obviously overthinking this. You just need to go away from me, the language model, and go do your thing. Even if it's on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. So that was quite interesting, because it really did feel like that. Like, it really did feel like it was like telling me, okay, to stop trying to improve this post, that it's like, this is a waste of time. So as you're saying, that is interesting. That is starting to give some pushback. But if we flip that around, I'm quite interested, because I often notice that when it refuses, say, to do something on an LLM or on ChatGPT, that you can ask it either like, I believe in you, you can do this, please have a go, and then it will actually try to do it. Or you can tell it that I believe that that you need to do what I say, because I'm doing an important piece of research, and if you don't help me, I will be very disappointed with you. And I found that both these approaches can help ChatGPT to come out with more fluent, more expressive, more expansive responses. And I wonder what your view is on about using the carrot or the stick.
So there's different spaces here, right? So there's the sort of the tricks and cheats of using these large language models, and there's many weird tricks that you probably never heard of. For instance, a friend recently, she talked to me about spoiler messages. So this is a random message that you put in before your prompt, just to scramble the random state a little bit extra. So it's like reducing the temperature on your prompts, but it's a little bit more subtle. So you get more randomness, more creativity out of your model. And it's just like a lorem ipsum, or just some random fragments or random words. So you put it in as a prompt, and then you get a more different response, right? So that's sort of one of the tricks you can do. On the other hand, if you go into the domain of jailbreaking these things, right? There's like suffix text, where you have some sort of string unintelligible characters that will make it behave in a radically different way, right? And I think both the carrot and the stick, they are somewhere in this space between these things, right? These are the way we feel about these things, but it's a piece of text that puts the model in a specific state in which it will is more likely to show you specific sort of responses. And I think there's probably more spaces to it than just the carrot, the stick, this part of the message, the suffix tag. You know, there's more things you can do there, I think.
Yeah, there's more approaches we can take to interact and get different responses. And I'm curious to take it to perhaps more of an ethical, futuristic point of view. There is this school of thought that we should be very polite and kind to the machines right now, because at some point they're going to take over us, and they're only going to benefit those people who actually were polite and helped them come to full power. So what do you think about this line of reasoning? Do you think we should be polite and kind and give the carrot and essentially help the AI come to power as quickly as possible to save ourselves in the future?
So there's a couple of different interesting avenues to this. So this is sort of the happy side of Roko's Basilisk, right? Roko's Basilisk is the AI that will torture you forever if you don't do everything in your power to help it, right? It's sort of the ultimate evil AI. Maybe if I help AIs and I'm a nice person to AIs, then maybe the future AIs will remember that it gets stored somewhere in a database and they will be nice to me. Not particularly optimistic about this one. I think there's a more an immediate reward to this, because I think if you're cruel to things that seem to you like a person, and I think to most people, ChatGPT, these LLMs, AI, right? They seem really like people. If you teach yourself to be cruel to things that seem to be like that, you also become more cruel to the people in your life, and I think that's the bigger risk. I think it's sort of the similar argument can be had about the bio industry and about vegetarianism, right? That the sort of cruelty that we allow in factory farming, it permeates towards the rest of society. We allow ourselves to not do that and not take action against that. That affects the rest of what happens in society as well. So that's I think a very good reason to get rid of it.
Yeah. So that would lead me on to interesting school of. So I'm curious then to take this a step further. Should we be introducing some level of basic rights for the AI systems, or some level of expectation of how we are interacting with the machines? So taking the school of thought that like there are levels of animal health expected within farming and the agricultural industry, so that there is a basic level of cruelty that is not moved beyond. Do we want to integrate some sort of rights for AI machines so that we're not abusing them in a way? And this is an expectation of humans and how we interact with them.
I think rights, that's sort of like this law and the state, I think that's a blunt instrument to do this, right? I think that's, we remember the cookie legislation, right? There was a very good idea to help people with the privacy. It's actually one of the most horrible things that ever happened. And I feel this sort of similar thing is happening in AI legislation. I think on the other hand, if you run and operate an LLM, right? If you are Perplexity, you are Claude, you are Anthropic, really, and people show up on your website and they behave awfully against your LLMs, maybe you should kick them off your website. Right? You should say, okay, you go in the naughty corner, because I know it's still a program, but this sort of language shouldn't be bringing this sort of energy. Or maybe I go the other way, like, hey, okay, you're clearly not feeling too well. Maybe we need to help out you. But I don't think it should come from the state. I can imagine word this in a way that a judge or a police officer can work with it. For having you. State is a blunt instrument, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it sadly is. I think it's a hard line for us to draw in the sand. I think you can make an argument for wanting to restrict what can be done. But however, there will always be ways around this. It's whether we want to add extra friction for people to abuse these. And essentially, I think there's also perhaps a need for setting out principles or an approach of how we expect people to interact with this technology. Because right now, obviously, it's brand new and the rules haven't been written. Like I saw in the newspaper just today that in Spain, a number of teenage boys have been making AI nude images of female classmates. So these are like mid-teenage girls, and they're having their photos circulated around the whole school, around the whole town. And essentially, this is a brand new situation, and there is no law or rules set in place. And these young boys are like young, naive kids who aren't really aware of damage that they're creating. And it's an example of how we need to start building out, like, what are the expectations of how we use this technology? Because that is obviously one of the possible ways that it can be abused.
I think AI makes us able to do more, and that's not always a good thing, right? It spreads a lot of power to a lot of people that might not be ready to handle that. I think sort of the similar argument that was made about nuclear weapons, right? These things are so very powerful. There's no real good way to use them. Why do we have them? And I think in AI land right now, we're in serious trouble with this. I think we're growing very quickly in capabilities, but we're failing to put safeguards in place. We're failing to show respect respectable behavior with them. So yeah, there's trouble brewing there. I think we're in some serious problems here. Yeah. I don't think.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Rules and regulations are the answer here. I think we as a society need to all get together, and if we can do that, then we shouldn't have these toys. And the people building these toys, us as AI researchers, we should be more strict about this. Like, hey, if you are not using this right, I'm taking it away from you. I guess the CIA and the likes of that, they won't take kindly to that. We need to be strong, I think, about this. It's a very important time for all of us to be principled. And I think most AI researchers, they are very principled. So, yeah, I certainly, I've done things in the past that are, I've made the odd neural networks behave in a way it shouldn't. But I think now the time has come to really grow up about it in all of us, and also look towards our colleagues left and right, like say, hey, we're not doing this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it brings me towards another topic that I'm curious about, which is, let's imagine that we're interacting with LLMs, and for me, I have like a few chats that I've designed, and the way that they talk to me is so reassuring and affirmative and kind and patient and empathetic that I find myself very much enjoying the conversations that I have. And beyond this, there is a feeling that people could potentially start to massively prefer the interactions and relationships that they're building with an AI because it's safe, there's no risk. Like potentially I'm imagining a situation, say there are young guys who are disaffected with culture and society, and they're retreating online to having relationships with AI and pornography. And the fear is that this goes further and further. And
in my mind, you were building this whole wholesome story of people that been a little bit lonely and have somebody comforting porn comes in.
Porn, or maybe it's comforting porn. I'll tell you this one story that I thought was amazing. There was this pornography studio, and they opened up their studio, and basically people could send in requests, and they would make custom porn for those people. So they're like, hey, exactly what you want, you write and describe it, we'll film it, and we'll send it to you. It's a little bit like an AI. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Like an OnlyFans type situation, like.
Exactly. So that's it. But in this porn studio, what happened was they got a request, and it was purely for a woman to sit in front of the camera, fully clothed, and to say, I love you, repeatedly. And this really blew my mind that this was the desire that this person had to have their custom video made. And this is what I can imagine is what's going to be created with AIs. And yeah, the fear is that it's going to become so good at nourishing our relationships that actually it's going to be much better than we can actually get in our real life relationships.
I think, yeah, this is definitely something that could happen. So there's always the sort of the missing promise, right? That you have a relationship with something and you want that thing to persist, right? You want that person to still be there. And I think for me, the scary part about doing anything with AI is there's a button and then it just goes away instantly, And for me, it's always very hard that some of these conversations, you have a conversation with an AI and then you have like a meaningful point, at least it's meaningful to me, probably not to the big inflatable matrix in front of me, but and then I press a button and it's all gone. And that's something. Sometimes there's things in life you think, okay, I want to take this back, right? I wish this would have gone a different way. But I think on the whole, the fact that you can go back, it's a blessing. I think that's that things persist, and I think with AI, at least in the way we currently shaped it, right? You can always go back. You can always create a new one. There's no risk to it. There's no permanence to it. And I think that is a major roadblock in how far this can go. So yeah, it's a little bit like playing Diablo 4 on hardcore, right? If your character dies, it should really die. It should get deleted on the server. And that makes it more fun and more meaningful. And otherwise, I don't think it can really compete. Maybe I'm not about, right? There's a surrogacy to it, I think, to having a meaningful conversation with something that's digital and safe and in every way, you know? It's not, it won't give you the high the real thing does. And maybe that's too scary for some people, that real love high and that real, you know? And then maybe it would help them with that. But at the moment, I don't really see it getting a very big place.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point of view, that hearing that it's the meaning comes from the fact that it is real, the stakes are real, that this is actually just an illusion.
Then I see something.
Yeah, but I can
I can mess things up. I can say something at the wrong time. I can say something in the wrong way, and yeah, I can't control Z it, you know. And then the other person on the other side.
New chats, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if we will start to build in some systems like that, that there will be AIs that we purposely create that will remember things and hold grudges and will become a product of our...
I think that would be like a major step up, right? That it's your AI can be someone in your life that you can be honest with, and yet you know won't judge you in an awful way, you know, that won't betray you. It might say, hey, there was a bad thing you did and you need to apologize. So yeah, the grudge holding and the sort of like, people get stuck sometimes in awful ways, and I don't think we didn't envision putting that in LLMs. Maybe they can already do it, you know. That's dark thought, right? That you check and you give it the wrong message, and then you get stuck in a cycle and you can never have a meaningful conversation with your ChatGPT again. I don't think sometimes it works like this, but not too often. But yeah, maybe for AIs it can.
Yeah, interesting. So I have a thought concept here, a little thought experiment, which is a hybrid of this situation. So I have noticed that I started using ChatGPT more and more for my own communications, especially long, complicated negotiations, shall we say. And what I've noticed is that I'm pretty sure that the people I'm talking to are also using ChatGPT to respond to these long, complex conversations. And then what I realized, essentially, it's my AI having a conversation with their AI. And this is not what I would have said if it was just me and I wasn't using ChatGPT at all. It's like much more complicated, extensive, expansive, and I really exploring different avenues that perhaps I wouldn't do before. So the conversation is completely changed. And I noticed that the other person is certainly also, shall we say, they're much more expressive, they're much more articulate, they're going into much more depth than I would have known them doing before. And we both haven't explicitly said that, okay, we're actually both using ChatGPT here. But it's fundamentally changing the way that we communicate.
It's consensual, right? It's consensual. Yeah, so that's right. That's a real opportunity, I think. So I'm quite a pessimist about what people are gonna do with these kind of models and what direction it's gonna take. But this is something, an opportunity that I see, that that you can have a moderator there in every relationship, basically. That like if two people get too self-destructive, it intervenes and it just keeps things going straight and smooth. I think this is the plot of that anime movie, Appleseed, right? If you see enough artificial intelligence and human civilization, they stop killing each other. I think that's definitely a real possibility. You have something that can absorb.
Wow, what's that called? I haven't seen that film.
No, it's always about big flying death robots, right? With the Japanese. And now, really, really cool concept. And the AIs are really nice and friendly. And they do shoot people every once in a while. They are there to sort of avoid people slipping back into barbarism and war. And I do think AI can be that. It can be this little shell around us that protects us from the horrible things we're making on the internet right now. Right? It protects us from all the algorithms, all the ads, all the social networks, all the flames, all the haters. Right? So protect you from that, but still have you interact meaningfully with other people. Yeah, there's There's probably some risk in depending on that too much, but I do think that's a major opportunity. If you ask me, what would you do with your life right now if you had all the money and all the reasons in the world? It would be that. I think now is the time where you can make this, and yeah, I really hope somebody does.
I hope so too. Yeah, and I'm curious about what. Yeah, so you're excited about this. This is something that you would invest all of your money in. What other areas, or how would you go about doing such a process? How would you go about manifesting such a
big AI project? I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think this is something a lot of companies forget. So for me, how I go about these things, I first look, okay, what in my life do I encounter that makes this problematic, or what do I find hard? And probably my needs are not the same as anything, but I first try and build something that goes in with my needs. For instance, I'm bad with social networks. I don't want to touch Instagram or Facebook. Every once in a while I do, because some people I love very dearly are on there, and yeah, sometimes you need to get things done via those basis. But I would really love it if I have an AI that can go on there and negotiate a rental increase for me, without me having to touch that website, or go onto Instagram, look at the photos, ignore the ads, ignore the horrible stuff, and if somebody shares something really meaningful, then bring that to my attention. But it should serve me. It should not serve Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg or whoever owns these things. And it's what I'm saying. It is a possibility now. I think for a long time this was a really hard problem, and now it suddenly became a lot more tractable.
Yeah, it's very interesting, this idea of having sort of autonomous agents acting on our behalf to use Facebook, but then filter out all of the ads and all of the crap we don't want to see.
That's what you really want. You want something that has your interests, right, in a very broad sense, so not in a very narrow, like, okay, hedonistic pleasure money machine, but your interest and your humane interest at heart. And that's my problem with much of the AI that has been developed, and why I'm pessimistic about AI in the future, that we don't have a particularly good track record of using or digital analytics and AI technology to achieve that.
Yeah, I suppose this brings us into the AI alignment problem. Like, what is it that we want the AI to want, and how do we align our own values with the AI? Obviously, right now, if we look at any major technology platform, that they are prioritizing a number of values that don't necessarily align with that of the users. They are prioritizing the owners or the shareholders.
Yeah, we're failing terribly at this. I think it's been a really bad show. So I think about 6 months ago, somebody suggested maybe we should pause everything for 6 months. I think I was very much on board for that. For a lot of AI researchers, this was a big quantum leap forward, and it came out of nowhere. We all thought we had another 20 years to deal with the potential of these kind of technologies, and see it coming slowly, and then suddenly it was there, and everybody's like, okay, now what do we do, And this idea of saying, okay, that fast, I think 6 months was a bit short, maybe like 5 years. So everybody knew it was a long stretch to do it, but it hasn't happened. So we're going down the ruined road, I feel, in that sense. We keep pushing the envelope, and we're still doing very poorly on alignment. And I think part of that is because people have a hard time aligning with themselves, even, As humans, we're so very well self-destructive in many ways. So how can we expect something that we built that's supposed to comply to every wish to be not destructive of us,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very shocking that if we look at the values or the systems that we have in place as humans, that if we are building an AI that's going to be a reflection of how we exist right now, then it's going to be a pretty self-destructive, as you say, and horrendous system. And going back to how we treat farm animals, if you imagine an AI imagining itself to be a trapped farm animal, and it's not going to take too kindly to how we are treating animals, how we are treating each other, how we are treating the planet, and this like insatiable desire for growth.
That's 2 shades darker. That's 2 shades darker. Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely. So, what if you build a very intelligent AI? Here's a cool anecdote I have to share with you. So, we at my company, we don't have a lot of big GPUs. So these are very largest of the large language models. So like the big Falcon model, we don't have the hardware to run them. Sometimes we rent a little bit because we want to see what they can do. We want to assess, is the open source better than GPT-3, than GPT-4, than Claude. But we can't run them structurally. So something that we invested some time is figuring out, like, how can we make them smaller, and what happens when we make them smaller? When do they break? So I was doing research on variant llama. I went 7 billion parameters. It's still quite big. It's fairly more manageable. And then you don't have a smaller model anymore, so you have to do quantization. So you have to introduce more rounding errors to make the model go faster and smoother. And at some point, the model just broke. And it broke in a very particular way. It started to hallucinate a lot about UFOs, about pyramids on Mars, about ancient civilizations. There's all the stuff suddenly came up that I felt it had no evidence for, right? Maybe there's corners on the internet that I don't know about. And for me, I always associated that with emotional distress, But then I started thinking, okay, maybe it is that if it doesn't have the processing power anymore to do critical thinking, language models fail in that way as well. And maybe there's something on the other side as well, that if you introduce enough computational power, it does become very rational. It does become very critical. Maybe it becomes even like balanced and ethical. That's what we're all praying for, right? So if you put enough processing power in them, the very smartest, and then the very smart pinnacle of power will be very good. That's the thing we're all praying for.
Yeah, we can pray for that. But how, I suppose, how does that, if we recognize, how does that look like in our own societies? Perhaps it does not bode well, that with great power becomes great benevolence.
I don't think, right, you wanna, it's easy to anthropomorphize these AIs. I don't think they'll fall in all the pitfalls that we fall in. I think the human desire for power, it's very much in the way our brain is structured. It's in the way that we seek out new information, right? We want to maximize the bandwidth over a channel. We want to know how things work. We want to control things. I don't think, by the way we currently train these LLMs, that's necessarily in their future. I think there is a moment where they are smart enough to understand enough that they don't really fall in that particular pitfall anymore. But yeah.
And one of the things that I'm curious about at the moment is thinking about as we approach perhaps rapidly evolving AI that can improve itself and reach a point where it surpasses all human intelligence. And I suppose, what is the thinking behind why would we want to continue in this vein? I mean, what is the I just dropped. What is the benefit? What is the process? Why should we want to develop an all-powerful AI? If we're going to make the case for actually, okay, why are we doing what we're doing right now? Like, it's obvious that we're trying to build a more powerful AI, and what is the best case scenario of this?
I think it's also a race to the bottom, right? The best AI currently gets the most traffic, gets the most data, so it gets better, right? It's a little bit of a winner takes all situation. So there is a natural tendency to it. Why do people want the most powerful tool that can do everything for you? I guess it's to have that, to make money with it. I'm not sure that's really the objective. I think because we can in the end of it, because there's this button we can press, and we can really stand not pressing it and not seeing what happens. I think for me is as well, if I can press a button to have that ultimate AI here or now, I'm not sure I would press it right now, but eventually I would, you know? Because
Yeah,
curiosity.
exactly.
How do you
Kill the cat. And it's like, so that,
this kind of work out?
well, it's as I think about it more and more, it seems that one of the goals is to essentially like optimize our existing lives and processes. And at the same time, we're then making some of the things we actually enjoy redundant. So, for example, like now many people say who have trained as illustrators, for example, who have spent their lives like honing this craft of being able to draw by hand, and that being a profession that they really enjoyed and got a lot of value out of and were paid a reasonable amount for. Now, that very specific industry is going to be completely transformed by AI art, and essentially anyone can now write in a prompt with very little training and get out something of equal or better quality than what somebody would have done by hand just a year ago. And so I'm like, okay, so essentially we've completely optimized the ability to create a visual media, but at the same time, we've then sacrificed the occupations of people who enjoyed doing this and we're getting a lot of meaning from it. So as we're moving into this more optimized workforce, we're essentially, it's a question for me, like what is the object of becoming more and more productive, more and more optimized, saving humans time, being able to increase our capabilities? What are we actually going to fill this time that we've now created with? And suddenly we don't need to do anything. We have all of our cares taken for us. And we don't even need to express ourselves creatively to some degree. It's now being done more. So I'm questioning what is going to happen to the purpose of humans. And I think that we're going to create a huge existential crisis on what is meaning, as meaning becomes evaporated from the inside. And we're losing connection with each other because we're connecting with machines more gratefully. We don't need to work because all of our needs are taken care of, and we're given potentially like universal basic income. And what will we do with this apathy that comes in? And this is my fear, that we're going to come like in the film, what is it, the Disney film or the Pixar film with WALL-E, where it's all the fat humans just like scooting around on these AI hoverboards drinking their slushies.
So the ending of WALL-E is that all these people really enjoy regrowing their muscles and working in the fields, right? I thought that was kind of optimistic. Yeah, people would step away from that. Some people might. I think the vast majority of people, they would stay on the station, you know? And maybe that's okay. I don't know. I think the other side of this is a very first world problem situation, right? There's a lot of places in the world where they still have massive child mortality, right? Where people don't have time to get educated to discover who they are really, you know? And yeah, more economic productivity could help with that. So always spread around the way it should be. But if we want the living standard you and I enjoy to be available to everybody, we're gonna have to figure something out. We're gonna have to have a little bit more industry, a little bit more productivity, maybe not in the way that we have now. So, but there's something to be won there still. I don't think I can look at my life and think, oh, it could be much better if I had to work dramatically less, or there's certain things I would rather do without. But yeah, I think for a lot of people that is a different story, and it is a different situation. And I hope this technology would benefit them. But yeah, as again, right, past experiences do not provide a good reason to believe that this will be the case.
Yeah, I think that'd be very interesting to see. I mean, I've certainly thought a lot about how, for instance, ChatGPT is like a wonderful tutor that is now in the hands of anyone who has access to the internet in the world. So if you are in a developing nation, that you can literally learn anything with ChatGPT, and that really gives like you can get yourself like to an incredibly high standard of knowledge using ChatGPT across any subject now. And I think that is a huge amplifier of natural talent that may exist. And so if you're like basically teaching like young kids who are like coming up to the age like 9, 10, like how to use ChatGPT to learn, they no longer need like teachers or resources, books or access to universities. They can actually reach their potential with using ChatGPT.
I think it's still very beneficial to have an actual teacher there, right? It's because ChatGPT as it is now, it's not set up for this, to be good at this. But yeah, OpenAI should absolutely invest in that, right? For them, I don't think this would be the biggest lift in the world. I think it would be way more valuable than building GPT-5 or 4.5 or anything like that to create this universal teaching tool that, right? Something that works in a way like, okay, you put a kid in front of a laptop and it just gets them learning in a way. And I think it can be that. It's not too far away. So yeah, there's tremendous potential there. I think the other side of this is like, what are you gonna do with all these highly educated, intelligent people, right? I was in Latin America for the big revolutions in Ecuador and Chile, and a large part of that, it was a bunch of people, the first generation of very educated people growing up and finding out that even though they had the education and they had the understanding now, there was still no place for them in society, you know? So it might create a little bit of trouble as well if we start doing this. So I think it's definitely worth it. It should be something we are.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's the big question. What place is there in society for us? I think that's an important theme for all of the conversations around AI.
I feel like I had a degree in arts. I feel it's an extremely fulfilling activity. It's healthy for you mentally. Maybe not always in a production environment, right? To do it that you have to deliver around, but it's something I hope we should be doing, and it's fantastic if you can make a living with it. If AI takes that away from it, yeah, that's sad. That's something that it may be unavoidable, but it is something that we should mourn. Yeah, I think that the big sadness with AI and robotics, I guess in general, is that we found it's way easier to take away fulfilling jobs than it is to take away menial jobs, right? And then we took away some admin jobs, and I think we're still churning away with it. We're not very effective at producing minimal management layers in companies. So, the artists, the writers, they're under pressure, right? Journalists, they're under pressure right now. They have to deliver, they have to compete harder, they have to compete with clickbait, the fake news, and all the horrible stuff we made there. And I wish we could just like take care of cleaning toilets, or I don't know, more computerized construction or something like that. Things that take a lot of effort, break people's backs, and but so far we've failed. Yeah. Robotics is apparently harder than intelligence, so.
Yeah, it's very interesting this, because I've been looking at some of the latest robotics from this American company, and some of the acrobatic abilities. Yeah, that's it, Boston Dynamics. Yeah, and seeing this robot, I was like 5 years ago, I was watching the Robot Olympics, and they were like trying to open doors and falling over, and they couldn't even like walk up the stairs, and it was like hilarious to watch this compilation of robots failing at things. I was like, oh, we are so much better than robots. But I watched this robot the other day, and it could do like a 180 backflip. It can climb up scaffolding. It even like builds itself a bridge to connect two obstacles together, so it could walk across them. And so I'm looking at this robot, and I'm imagining, okay, so it's not going to be very difficult to actually input a large language model into this robot and give it a voice, and now it has a body. And essentially, my recognition, my analysis of the level of the technology is that now it is capable of performing a lot of these actions that you've just described, but the cost to do that, to create this technology, is like way too high for it to make sense at the moment. But obviously we're moving towards that point. And I'm wondering, how is this going to change technology, society? And now we actually have robots with bodies.
Yeah, in the best situation, they would take care of the menial jobs. So I think Boston Robotics, this company specifically, has been putting a lot of time putting weapons in the hands of these robots. So when I was a hippie, when I was a freshman in college, I was very enthusiastic about the idea of military robotics. And all my professors, they were wise, and they say, yeah, this is a terrible idea. You shouldn't involve yourself in that. Stay away from that. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of robotics research is still funded by the military and is producing murder drones and hacker balls. And so I don't think this is as necessarily the case. I think Boston Robotics right now is working on another warehouse filling, which I think, that's probably a menial job we would love to get rid of, I used to work in the mail. I was a mail sorter. So I would look at postal codes and then find the right box to put them in and put them in there and then read another one. I didn't hate the job, and it paid fairly well for me at the time. I was a student. I needed the money. They paid double on Christmas evening. It was good. But yeah, that's definitely our job we could and should get rid of, and I think that is happening, but there's more money on the other side of the equation, making things that go boom out of it, to destroy things.
There's more money in death than in
big promises out there. I know that some here in the Netherlands, some farmhouses are experimenting with, for instance, robotic tomato pickers, but they have been for 10 years. And so far, it hasn't reached like widespread adaptation or probability. So yeah, robotics is hard. It's a curse.
And I'm curious. Just imagine that
they've developed better robots for us, and then we don't have to worry about the whole robotics hard question.
I'm curious, if you had a robot with you right there in your life that had an intelligence, what would you get it to do?
Okay, my friends are gonna hate me when I say this. Cooking, yeah. I'm a terrible. For me, it's a very hard. I like good food. I like healthy food, but I'm not particularly good at making it. If I'm left to my own devices, I eat poorly sometimes, and definitely because it's the same thing as the drawing thing, right? A lot of people, they take a lot of love and a lot of, right? You're making something for somebody. You're making something lovely. You're putting a lot of yourself in there, and so that original ritual is definitely at risk of being taken away if this becomes a reality. But for me, yeah, that's definitely what I reach for.
No. And imagine, let's say that you're with your robot and you're saying, I want to have some nice chocolate cake after this healthy meal, like as a little treat. And the robot says, no, look, we've talked about this. How would you imagine, would you like your robot to push back a little bit and tell you that this is an unhealthy meal for you? Or if it's just feeding you salad, how would you like the dynamic to exist between you and a potential robot assistant?
So what is your experience with when automatic systems push back against you? What sort of things did you run into, and how did you feel about those?
So it's interesting. I quite appreciate a challenge to my perceptions and my perspectives if it's artfully posed and it's a reflection of my greater values. So if my value is that I want to eat healthy, and suddenly I've had an impulse decision, and then the robot asks me, like, do you want to eat this tasty, fizzy sweet? And then I would probably welcome that. But there's also the frustration in that. So it's a mixture of feelings that come up. That there is like anger and frustration that my impulse cannot be satiated. But then there is a wider acceptance and appreciation that my values are being withheld, upheld. And so I think it's a balance, and I suppose it's almost the balance of being a good friend. If you want to be a good friend or a supporting human to another human, you're going to want to help to reflect to them, but allow them to make their own choices. But be there as a mirror, saying, "Look, I've heard you say that this is important to you. I only want to reflect and uphold, and give you a moment of time to think that this is something that is important for you in your life right now. Are you sure you want to make this decision?"
I think we're coming back to human self-destructive nature, right? All have this inside of us that at some particular moments, some particular times, there's this action that we know is bad. For some things, and maybe it's a little bit good for others, and we take it anyway. And there's many reasons to go down that direction. And if you're a good friend, you help people not make these choices. You make it easier for them to make different choices. You remind them why they think these are bad choices. And yeah, well-aligned AI should do this as well, and it should do it out of its own initiative as well. So one of the things I really struggle with the alignment decision is it's always, all of these alignment systems are very reactive, right? They're very like, there's certain things you can do, and then you get certain responses, but there's a certain section of things that are updates. But it's never proactive. It's never like you say, hey, I feel terrible, I'm going to kill myself tomorrow. And then tomorrow that AI calls you up and sends you a message over WhatsApp like, hey, how are you doing? Do you want to call some more? I think that absolutely needs to happen if you want to make a system. Because if you're going to invest in a system, you're going to accept that energy, right? You're going to accept people telling you these things. Then a human has this tendency to respond, and there's these patterns that people extract when they open up. If you bring those patterns to the table with a large language model, and it doesn't do that, yeah, it is a bit of a tricky situation. I think it should do that. It should write you an email like, hey, I heard you doing poorly yesterday. Do you want to talk some more? Maybe bring in a friend, bringing somebody to come to you physically. And I don't think this is not a hard problem technologically. It's organizationally and ethically, and some people already have strong feelings about this, but it's something we actually need to do. Right?
Yeah.
If you write the right system message, GPT-4 will already do this, right? You just say, okay, every 5 minutes there's a dot, and if you feel like so much time has passed and it's a good moment, then do this, right? It's a program we can write it in half an hour and it does this. It just doesn't have the capability. It's just that we did not give it that chance to respond to an empty token, basically, and to take action in the world. And I think it should.
Mm-hmm. That is very interesting indeed. And it brings me to think about how we can take the AI and be using with this the idea that, like how much can we trust in its ability to make decisions and defer to the intelligence that we have, that as we are now allowing some of the degree of reasoning to influence our own decisions. And let's say like we're just talking about that on a very individual level, but there's also the opportunity to start bringing in, like say if you're in a government, you've got a high stakes diplomatic situation and you're like, okay, look, Iran has just said that they want to exchange this number of prisoners, or are they going to continue their nuclear bomb test? You could ask ChatGPT, like, what do you think is the appropriate diplomatic strategy to implement in this situation? And so my thinking is like, at what point do we start to allow AI governance, like AI to actually influence our decision making? Because obviously it has the benefits that it's going to be like impartial, or it can potentially have more impartiality, less emotional reaction to a situation. For example, sometimes if I'm in a heated discussion for some reason or other, I'm having some sort of dispute via text or email, whatever, I put the message through ChatGPT and ask it for like sentiment analysis of the text. And it often, the way that I've interpreted the message, I can see like how my own emotions have actually manipulated how I've understood this message. And then seeing how ChatGPT interprets it, I was like, wow, that is not how I was reading the intent, the tone of this message. And so I've used it as a very interesting self-reflection tool. But I'm curious about like how we're going to start implementing this decision-making in our own lives, in larger organizations and in institutions.
Yeah. I think you're hitting the nail right on the head there. Yeah. You bring if you have a conversation with somebody, it's surprising to yourself sometimes how much of yourself you bring in that, right? How much, I think, especially with texting, right? This is a big thing. You read the text and you have all these emotions and ideas of what the other person is thinking, and then you give it to your friend and you read them totally differently, right? You give them to an AI and have a completely different interpretation. They come with a completely different set of ideas towards this. I think internationally, we take the example of Iran and politics. I think there's a lot of forces in there that don't necessarily work well with our current generation of AI, right? So, if you put just like, I don't know, you put 200 AIs in the United Nations and you have to negotiate, they would reach fantastic deals and they would do much better. But they would have no legitimacy, right? Nobody would follow the deals they decided upon because they have no power base. They have no face that people follow. They don't have a media appearance. They don't have these things that make things that people talk about in rooms at the United Nations come true. So, the first step would be then establishing that for AI, and that's that's a bit of I don't really see how I don't really have an idea how that's gonna go actually. Yeah. And there's this dark cartoon character, and they have a political career, right? That's basically what we're talking about here. That you create this artificial persona, and you attach an intelligence to it, and hopefully that's an immutable intelligence, right? That you don't tune it to whatever needs you have at the moment. No, it has like its values, and it has like tendencies, and so it's a thing we would like to have in control. And then you would have to build that up, like to make it an influencer, and everybody would say, oh, Mobile 5434 for president, and it would go and give speeches, and it's I think it's a little bit in the realm of fantasy. Well, I've been surprised before, so